Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take my mask off just so it's easier to hear me and understand me. The first order of business on our agenda this morning is public comment. The Board of Fire and Police Commissioners is a public body, like the City Council, like the County Board, the Park Board, the School Board, any other body of public officials. And as such, we are required to set aside a period of time at all of our meetings to hear from the public. And so today we fulfill that statutory obligation by allotting 30 minutes for public comment, 3 minutes per speaker. I have a list here of speakers who have signed up. We'll begin public comment by hearing from Travis Stockwell. Mr. Stockwell, are you here? Mr. Stockwell?
Yes.
Yes. You have 3 minutes to speak. You can take your mask off to speak, and please speak into the microphone.
All right. I'm not here in support or against any political movement. I'm here simply to support Officer Dan O'Shea. It is worth mentioning, though, that there seems to be a national pattern of conflict with law enforcement, that police are being held accountable for their actions, and I fully support that. Everybody should be held accountable for their actions individually. We should not be holding people accountable simply because they belong to a specific group of people. We, as a society, try to make distinctions between protesters and people that are looters. So I think we should extend that same logic and reasoning to the police. On May 18th, O'Shea made remarks about 16 and 17-year-olds. Since he came into his office, he's made public the fact that he's going to be focusing on violent offenders, and I think that's appropriate because we have a higher per capita violent crime rate than most any major cities. It's even higher than Chicago. A complaint was filed on June 23rd regarding this outrage. I just wonder where all that outrage was at when the actual comment was made. It seems convenient that on June 3rd, police and protesters had a clash. Well, protesters, that's a term I use loosely because in the beginning there was more than just protesters showing up. I'm glad to see now that they've seemed to calm down, that they're doing things the right way now. But in the beginning, there was some people not doing things the right way, and they needed to be held accountable. Dan O'Shea is not supposed to be a father figure for the community. Dan O'Shea is supposed to intimidate criminals into behaving, and the ones in which that fails, he's supposed to bring to justice. Now, I don't know exactly what happened between the protesters and the police. I assume it's more than what information has been released to the public, because the information released to the public indicates that he reached for the officer's gun, and in that particular instance, he's probably lucky he's alive if that's what truly happened. I assume there's more to it, though, that hasn't been released to the public yet because the charges were dropped. The timing seems to be really convenient between this complaint that's been filed and that instance that happened. It seems like it might be more of a power struggle than it is an actual legitimate complaint. Last year, well before Black Lives Matter protesters in Rockford,
Mr. Stockwell, your 3 minutes are up.
All right.
Wrap up.
All right. Well, anyways, I'm here on behalf of 2,800 people that signed a petition that said that they will be supporting Dan O'Shea with their vote the next time the election comes.
Thank you, Mr. Stockwell.
Thank you, everyone.
We appreciate your comments. The next speaker is Diana Walker. Diana?
Good morning to the police and fire commissioners and my fellow citizens. I am an active community activist and not only loves my city, but also is a member of the vintage era protesters from the 1960s. I believed that the work that we did positively addressed inequity in our nation, freeing my children and other people's children from facing future tribulations. Yet 60 years later, I stand before you in a hearing to determine if the merits for a probable cause hearing, specifically to determine if the person designated to lead the Rockford Police Department has violated the department's policy against bias policing. We from the 60s were wrong. We thought our work was done, yet it is not. The methodology has moved from Jim Crow with lynchings, water hoses, dogs, poll taxes, sheets, rape, and burning crosses, to the new Jim Crow. Methodology cloaked in the outer appearance of professionalism and conciliatory policies and tactics. Succinctly, in the vernacular of the songwriter, they smile in your face while all the time they're trying to eradicate you from your earned place. I attended the community forums during the selection process for the sitting police chief. My citizen selection was for a candidate from Racine, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, he withdrew at the 11th hour, resulting in the hiring of the present chief, Daniel O'Shea. During Chief O'Shea's term, I have observed a number of disturbing decisions which do not align with the task force recommended that was created by President Obama, the 21st century policing. This coup de grace is the foundation of this complaint. The issue before the commission should solely be not focusing on extraneous issues of personality and likability. Solely, did Chief O'Shea violate Rockford police policy on bias policing? Do the statements admittedly made by Chief O'Shea manifest in the method of governance of those designated in our community to serve and protect? I believe that the heart is the operating mechanism that ignites not only decisions, but also actions. Attempts to label the statements as a misinterpretation on my behalf and others are not based on fact. It is a heart issue, succinctly. For what flows from the heart directs the brain, ultimately directing actions and deeds, and in this case, governments of others. In other words, the chief is the leader of all the police officers. So if this person has this mindset in their heart, that's going to manifest in the actions.
Diana?
Yes?
Your 3 minutes are up. If you could
Okay.
wrap up, please.
All right. It's succinctly, that's what I want the commissioners to focus on, whether or not Chief O'Shea violated the policy on bias policing. Nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. We appreciate you taking the time today. Our next speaker is Harlan Johnson. I think Harlan's downstairs. Thank you, Harlan. Feel free to use either microphone.
I couldn't hear you, but I was able to watch your body language. I'm Harlan Johnson. I call myself a community therapist. Officially, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I have a comment regarding the event that prompted all of this, Chief O'Shea's comments. Regarding Chief O'Shea's remarks, they were part of a longer statement about the need to reach young children. Even though helping small children isn't specifically a police activity, many different agencies work on it, I welcome his public approval of these activities. Unfortunately, Chief O'Shea didn't mention and hasn't responded to a request I made when he first came to Rockford, a request I had made 5 years ago in a column that I have here, which I will distribute. and I had proposed it to the previous chief and mayor, and it was dismissed by them. Since then, I've discovered that we need to follow the example of Richmond, California, which has an Office of Neighborhood Safety, a program to identify young men who have been killing each other with guns and assisting them in their life journey to become educated, be employed, have decent housing, and be well equipped to raise children and have a healthy family relationship and eliminate guns from their lives. Since then, I've discovered it's even better than the situation I described in my column. The startling success of this program merits study and planning to implement a similar one here in Rockford. It wouldn't be a police activity, and it would employ returning citizens to mentor and support these young men. I've approached the mayor and the chief. Chief O'Shea has not responded. Mayor McNamara has positively, and I'm hopeful Rockford may be able to lower the number of handgun murders by young men. I'm appealing to Chief O'Shea to support this innovation. Now, I haven't mentioned the killing of Carrie Blake, which has been described as a murder, and the fact that Chief O'Shea and all of his police under his direction chose not to attend a symposium co-sponsored by the NAACP, Eliminate Rockford, and another organization, and other egregious things that he's done. But the key point I want to make is about this, the remark he made, his having ignored the recommendation that was made and the encouragement I have that for the city to adopt that. The police department will need to be able to cooperate with activities that's designed to help young men stop murdering each other. They would not be directly involved, but their support is essential, and I urge that he take that stand. And may I give this column out so that members of the board and other people can read it. I wrote this 5 years ago, and the program's been involved already for 15 years.
Sure, Harlan, why don't you leave it right there on the ledge?
Okay, it's been adopted by many cities, and the numbers are, the science about it is very good.
Sure. Thank you, Harlan. Your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, Chicago ignored it, and that's why they've got problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marty Mckinney. Is Marty here? There she is. Good morning.
I am here today to speak and show my support for Chief Daniel O'Shea. Under his leadership, he has helped to rebuild the morale amongst his rank and file. He has also demonstrated a willingness and ability to hold officers accountable when necessary. Under his leadership, the Rockford Police Department has enacted numerous outreach programs aimed at the youth in our community. Pizza nights, game nights, homework help, movie nights, daytime drop-ins for crafts and workshops, all designed to reach the youth that need these things the most. All of these things were made possible under Chief O'Shea, and he deserves our support and ability to continue to lead. He deserves better than the words intentionally taken out of context. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Appreciate you taking the time today. Our next speaker is Brandon Gordon. Morning, Brandon. Feel free to use either microphone.
Good morning.
3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm here not in support or denial of Chief O'Shea. I'm here for the truth. The reason that we're here, Chief O'Shea stated them on a live interview with WRAX. Systematic oppression, horrible education, bad families, and just families not be able to take care of their children. I stated this before the police commission, and the police department has a $110 million budget for this year. There are several programs that directly affect these troubled youth that can make a huge difference in these children's lives. But we have a huge proportion of our city's funds going to fund the police department and not directly affecting the youth of Rockford. The statements that Chief O'Shea made hurt. They hurt like hell. To know that 16 and 17-year-old children are killing and murdering each other, that hurts my soul. That's something that the city, this board, and the commission has to do something about. It's not a chief problem, it's not a community problem, it's a city-wide issue. Something that we can no longer turn a blind eye to, something that we can no longer act like does not exist. The faith community is lacking in Rockford. Commissioner, I love you. The seat that you hold as the president of the Rockford Ministers Fellowship, sir, we have to have a faith-based program for our youth, to give our youth a foundation of truth in order to make these type of situations not happen. Our youth are being made to have to raise themselves. And as long as our youth are raising themselves, this will never change. Lady Di just said the last chief of police resigned. We're calling for a resignation of another chief of police today. Nothing is going to change unless the system changes. If you fire Chief O'Shea and don't change the system, nothing's going to happen. If you keep Chief O'Shea and change the system, okay, everything can change. So let's stop turning a blind eye to the root cause of these issues here today. It's not a single man. It's an entire system that people in place and people in power are keeping that way. Until that system is demolished, nothing will change. 14, 15, 16, and 17-year-old young black men, Latino men in this city will continue to get killed and slaughtered until the people in power make a choice to change this system. It's pathetic. Everybody here has the power to change it. So we're going to keep having listening sessions, keep having meetings, and keep a system in place that is going to keep allowing children to get slaughtered and killed. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Our next speaker is Kitty DeLauziere.
Sorry.
It's quite all right. You have 3 minutes.
Pardon me?
You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I believe in Chief O'Shea has done the best thing that Rockford's had in 20 years. I am 70 years old, and I have seen this town go through heck with the Panthers coming out of Chicago and everybody else. That, I mean, it's like you gotta have tough love. How many times are they gonna go to jail before they end up killing themselves? Just like this past weekend's been the pits. I'm being very serious. It's like, what can people do? You can't let somebody keep going in jail and coming back out. I agree we do have to have some things done. But, I mean, it's like as far as they construed everything wrong out of what he said. I don't think he meant that, and he said he didn't mean that, and everybody that I know knows he didn't mean that. But you can't just let this city go to hell in a handbasket. I was born and raised, and I've been, like I said, through the Black Panthers back in the 60s when I was in high school. We had the Latin counts, but you've got to do something, and he's the only one. Epperson, I'm sorry, didn't do crap in this town. But I believe Dan O'Shea is the best chief we've had in many, many years. And I mean, it's like, what else can you say other than I think he belongs, actually, is to stay there and everything else. So there's not much more I guess I can say. So I can't even think of what I'll really say, but I don't care whether you're black, white, gray, blue, whatever. If you do the crime, you pay the time, as the saying goes, as most people believe in, if you're older or middle-aged. The younger set, a lot of times, I don't know what they're really doing in this world today. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Our next speaker is Brad Lindmark.
My brother was a police officer in this city for almost 30 years, so I have seen some of the changes firsthand or secondhand that have taken place. Chief O'Shea has brought this community, he's brought the department together like I've never seen. The department was, well, you saw the vote. Everybody knows the vote, 256 to 6. His leadership has brought the trust, the loyalty of the officers, and it's not just about the department. What Dan O'Shea has brought, he has brought community policing. He has done more for this city under his leadership, and it's a shame that we're even here today. He's a good man. This stuff was taken out of context. Give him a chance. The crime rate is going down in this city. When's the last time we were able to say that? Chief O'Shea is a good man, and I ask you today, do not set the city back by removing him. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is David Kalk. David Kalk.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is David Kalk. My wife Jana and I are the owners of the Nothing Bundt Cakes store here in Rockford. We thought it was necessary to come here and tell you what was going on as far as our observations are concerned. Since we opened up, we've been able to partner with the city of Rockford Police Department in numerous fundraising opportunities. When we talk with Chief O'Shea or his office, it almost invariably goes to some youth program that the department is involved in. Personally, I can tell you that in one way or another, I've been involved or had some contact with the Rockford Police Department through Chief Peterson, Chief Fitzpatrick, Chief Nielsen, Chief Epperson, and now Chief O'Shea. In my opinion, I'm glad to see that the Rockford City Police Department has a good working relationship with the other municipalities in the city. I think they have a better working relationship than the other regimes with regard to the state's attorney's office, with regard to working with the sheriff's department, and with regard to working with the city of Rockford. In my opinion, if there was a mistake that was made, this was a mistake of verbiage. And I haven't seen anything with regard to Chief O'Shea's involvement in the community that would support the fact that he should be removed or anything near that. Personally, I've learned from most of my mistakes more than anything else throughout the period of my career. And if we're not allowed to make these types of mistakes, as a mistake of verbiage, then how are we to learn? How are we to grow? How are we to be able to move on from whatever mistakes that we make, regardless of how big or how little they are? I think if Chief O'Shea were to be removed, that would be a huge step backwards with regard to this community. And I would hate for it to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is John Posey.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Posey, and I recently retired from the Rockford Police Department after 32 years of service. In my full time as law enforcement, I built a background and reputation of fostering and building professional policing. So I think I pretty much know what professional policing is, especially here in the city of Rockford. And I'm here to tell you that Dan O'Shea, by far, is the most professional, upstanding law enforcement administrator this city has ever had. And I will tell you what this gentleman has done throughout the years to foster professional policing far surpasses what any other policing professional has done, not only regionally, but throughout our United States. I won't go into his resume and his accomplishments, but I will touch on a few things. He has brought to the organization professional growth, training, great, tremendous leadership, advancements in technology, and let us not forget the most important component, and that is community engagement. Engagement across the board. You could take this gentleman and plug him into any city throughout this country, and you would have instant success starting tomorrow. And guess what? We brought him here, and our success was instantaneous, and it is still growing. Look at the reduction in the crime rates. You can't argue with that. You can't argue with that. There was so much more work to be done here, and this gentleman needs to stay here. Commissioners, you know me. I know you. We have worked together throughout the years on processes and projects. I ask you, I beg of you, let's put a quick end to this today. Let's allow him to go back to running this organization like he has been doing so tremendously throughout the last few years. And let's get back to our plan of making this community, this department, this region, one of the tops, one of the pillars throughout the country. Please. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, John. Next speaker is Pat Deary. Pat, the microphone right there.
My name is Pat Deary. I'm a longtime citizen of Rockford. I'm here in support of Chief O'Shea. I worked in industry for about 45 years, most of it here in Rockford. I have a master's degree in business administration from the University of Chicago, and I've served on at least a dozen boards of social service agencies and not-for-profits in this community. I feel I have a considerable amount of experience in the management of organizations of various sizes and types. I view Chief O'Shea's primary role as chief of the Rockford Police Department as that of a CEO or president of a company. As such, he's called upon daily to allocate limited resources to maximize the benefit his department can provide our city. At times, he's addressing a problem. At times, he's trying to make the best use of an opportunity, but he is always dealing with limited resources. Resources such as a budget, trained personnel, special skills, equipment, and time. Anyone who has managed an organization of any size at all knows what I'm talking about. Managers almost never have all the resources they would like to have in the fulfillment of their responsibilities. When I first heard Chief O'Shea's comments that are being reviewed today, my first thought was, he's made a determination that those resources dedicated to these young men so far have not had any measurable success in changing their behaviors. So as chief, he has to dedicate those resources in the future to another challenge that has more potential of benefiting the community. That's the type of decision he was hired to make on behalf of the community. The complaint before you alleges the chief is guilty of violating a department policy against biased policing because he's biased against 16 and 17-year-olds. In fact, the chief said the 16 and 17-year-olds running around shooting each other, we're not wasting our time to save them. He identified a very specific and hopefully small segment of 16 and 17-year-olds as those who go around shooting each other. I trust all of you as the commissioners believe the chief of police is justified in having a bias against any segment of society that goes around shooting each other. They are violating a very basic law and a basic tenet of society. He's doing his job. I've been in Rockford the entire time Chief O'Shea's led the police department. I'm extremely impressed with the results he's achieved. I believe he is and has been an outstanding police officer. I believe he's a strong leader who is well respected within the department. His leadership style has brought the morale and culture within the department to levels not seen in many years. He's extremely knowledgeable in the science of management and has demonstrated those skills in all that he has accomplished during his tenure here in Rockford. As a community, we should be thankful he has chosen to serve the people of Rockford. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Pat. Although we've heard from 10 speakers and we're at our time limit, we have 3 additional speakers signed up, and the commission is decided to extend the courtesy to the remaining 3 speakers to all those people who've signed up to speak today an opportunity to address them. So our next speaker is Ashley Williams. Ashley?
Hi, my name is Ashley Williams. I'm here to address the male who said these teenagers cannot change. The male who said we have nothing for these teens, and away they go. I say, away you must go. You have tainted the entire police force in the city with your inability to change. You have proven that your ego is so big that you cannot and will not acknowledge your own insensitivity, how your thoughts are biased and will forever affect this entire city and police force. As a nation under God, we are supposed to believe everyone can change. Change not just for your fellow boys in blue, as you've stated before on rehiring a police officer who did commit police brutality. In what mind do you believe that as a grown male who commits multiple crimes can change, yet a kid between the ages of 13 and 19 cannot? You, sir, are the problem. You and others like you are failing these kids, not their families, but the broken system led by narrow-minded individuals. And if occupational stress caused you to make the statement, your heart and mind proved in the second conference that you, sir, cannot change your own mind. But because you have told these kids that there is no saving or changing them, I'm here to put another bug in their ear and to speak power and greatness in their lives. So hear me loud and clear. As a believer of God, you can change to every teenager. And in the words of Mr. Perkins, though it reads, "Hey, black child," excuse me, this is for every child of all races and colors. Hey, black child, and there's some downstairs, do you know who you are, who you really are? Do you know you can be what you want to be if you try to be what you can be? Hey, black child, do you know you're going where you really want to go? Do you know you can learn what you want to learn if you try to learn what you can learn? Hey, black child, do you know you are strong? I mean, really strong. Do you know you can do what you want to do if you try to do what you can do? Hey, black child, you can learn what you must learn. You can do what you can do, and tomorrow our nation will be what you want it to be. You can change at any stage in life, whether you have committed a crime or not, because God said you can, and no man can change that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Rhonda Greer Robinson. Rhonda. Morning, Rhonda. You can use either of the microphones on the outside of the well there.
Hers is heavy.
Feel free to take off your mask while you're speaking if you'd like.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, I want to say we must give the justice system what is missing: accountability. Accountability to our officers, to our community. I understand everyone's here this morning to chastise Chief O'Shea of what he said, but I had a change of heart on yesterday when I attended the meeting with the listening group with the mayor and the city council. And a white man stood up and said he considered black people roaches, scared roaches. And I'm like, wow, you know, this is a community issue that we must address. So I had a big turning point. As we build our community, we must address and make demands. And NAACP says we're done dying. So in order to make these demands from our police department, address issues that happens with our youth. As our youth are out here protesting, it's our opportunity to teach them the policies and the procedures, not to abuse them, not to have someone stand in front of their yard, and I don't know who's doing it, dressed in a Ku Klux Klan outfit. That is not how our community should be running. And those people who are doing those types of things should be held accountable. Our youth should still be able to get job opportunities. I'm talking to a lot of them, and they are they're getting denied jobs. That should not be happening in our community because they are speaking. They have the right to speak. They have the right to voice their opinion. We must stand up in our community, say enough is enough, and individuals hold them accountable. Chief O'Shea has done some outstanding things in our community that I have seen myself with our youth, as far as they had a program in the school, I'm a teacher, where it was 505, where the police officers came in under Carla Red, and they led the kids on responsibilities in the community as far as when it comes to policing and how to address police and how to know when they're in the wrong. So we need to continue these types of policies to make our community a better place. When I'm talking about accountability, I'm talking about everyone. Police officers, you know, they're humans just like we are. We have some good police and we have some bad policing. I'm asking Chief O'Shea to take that responsibility and hold his officers accountable. When they're off task and they're doing something, dismiss them, let them go, or suspend them until correction is done.
Rhonda, your 3 minutes are up. If you
Thank
can wrap
you.
up. Thank you for your comments. Our final speaker is Larissa Walston. Larissa Walston. So you can use that microphone right there. There you go. You have 3 minutes.
I just wanted to address the commissioners today. I unequivocally oppose having Dan O'Shea as the police chief. I can tell you that I just began working with CASA. We learn about how policing and brutality negatively and disproportionately affects people of color. We learn about how the judicial system typically incarcerates people of color at a higher rate and how they impose harsher sentences. So basically when he said what he said about, you know, not trying to help 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds and then went back and doubled down on that, saying that as early as 13 and 14 they choose to essentially not care. He said not care. A lot of people did find that to be racist. He didn't come outright and say that it was racism, but because policing and brutality and the other things that I mentioned earlier negatively and disproportionately affect people of color, when those things affect people of color and he's saying we're not caring about them, that statement could be, you know, construed as racism. I can tell you from my experience, being blatantly honest, when I was 19, I was arrested. I was given another chance, and I'm not going to pretend like it didn't have something to do with my appearance, because although I do come from a biracial background, I'm mostly passing. At 23 years old now, I'm a homeowner. I'm doing, you know, well for myself. I basically distance myself from police and having anything to do with the judicial system. I myself at one point wanted to be a police officer until I realized that this kind of behavior is unacceptable. This kind of behavior that is displayed by multiple officers, not just comments that were made by Dan O'Shea. I'm very close friends with Patrick Gettings, the person that was brutalized by a police officer in the Rockford Police Department, and that officer had charges brought against them, and I think that's also indicative of the way that the Rockford Police Department is working. And because that's being headed up by Dan O'Shea.
3 minutes are up, if you could wrap up.
Okay, because that statement was made by Dan O'Shea as the head of the department, the way the body follows is on him. He needs to lead in a manner that doesn't give these officers the opportunity to act in a way that is brutalizing and harmful to the community.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we are at the end of our public comment period. Moving on down our agenda, the next item of business is the approval of the minutes from our June 16th, 2020 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Is there a second to that motion? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. We have no old business to attend to, so we will move to our only item of new business to address today. This is the primary purpose for which we're convened, and this is the probable cause hearing on the complaint filed against Police Chief Daniel O'Shea. I thought the crowd gathered here today might benefit from a little background about the Commission and why we're here today. We thank you all for coming and taking such a keen interest in the Commission's business. We're not accustomed to seeing crowds like this at our meetings. Most of the work that we do relates to the recruiting, hiring, and promoting of officers, and it attracts little attention from the public. The Commission is a statutory body. It's established by state statute. The commissioners are civilians appointed by the mayor and approved by the City Council, and their responsibilities fall into three primary categories. They are charged with recruiting and hiring new officers of the Rockford Police Department and the Rockford Fire Department. They are also charged with the promotion of those officers through the ranks as they move up. And then finally, they are charged with a limited scope of discipline. And it's that third category of responsibility that brings us here today. State statute is very clear. When a complaint is filed, the Commission has to take action on it, and so we convene this meeting today to address whether there is probable cause to continue to an evidentiary hearing on the complaint. Today's meeting is not a hearing. It is a meeting to determine probable cause. So it's easiest to think about that in terms of whether or not the Commission believes that the complaint has merit sufficient to warrant taking the next step to a hearing where we might hear from witnesses and take evidence before making a decision as to whether or not discipline is warranted by the complaint. Today's complaint was filed and amended and is relatively succinct. It alleges that certain comments that were made that are not disputed violate the police department's policy against biased policing, and specific sections of that policy are set out in the complaint. So the Commission's task today is to look at that complaint, hear from Dan O'Shea in response to that complaint. It's only fair that the individual against whom the complaint is filed has an opportunity to confront his accuser and present his or her side of the circumstances. After that, the Commission will make a determination as to whether or not there's probable cause. So at this point, I would invite Chief O'Shea to join us. One final note as the Chief makes his way in, this is a personnel matter, so the Commission is entitled under law, under the Open Meetings Act, which it is subject to convene this meeting in closed session for the purpose of addressing this issue. They have chosen not to do that today in the interest of public transparency and allowing the public, members who are here today, who are both in favor or opposed or perhaps neutral on the issue, the Commission wants to afford those members the right to witness the process. Chief, you can sit wherever you'd like. Since the Commission is over here, perhaps in Alderman Chiarelli's seat. Right here, I'm sorry, Chief, where he sits during council. Chief, the floor is yours.
Very good. Good morning, Commissioners and public that is here to view and watch this. I'll keep this as simple as possible. I do not discriminate and have not discriminated against anyone based on their race, color, ethnicity, age, gender, national origin, religion, economic status, cultural group, sexual orientation, or any other identifiable group. I do not have or hold biases against 16 and 17-year-olds or any other age group. I realize some individuals have taken or understood or perceived a few sentences from one of my press conferences and taken or understood or perceived them not as I intended. That press conference being the one where the Winnebago County State's Attorney and I were talking about a 17-year-old being charged with a murder from the previous days. While I believe it is a well-known fact, I do not discriminate based on my everyday interactions and my behaviors. I will offer these following statements of support. In April of 2016, in my swearing-in speech when I came to Rockford, I said the following, quote, "We will embrace creating juvenile initiatives that keep kids out of criminal activity instead of waiting for them to become criminals." Since that time, I, along with the men and the women of the Rockford Police Department, have been part of initiating, instituting, engaging, or funding a multitude of programs for juveniles and young adults in this community, from the age of toddler to middle age and even older. Some of these programs are as follows. With the Rockford Public Safety Pathways program with RPS 205 and Alignment Rockford, we're grooming high school kids to go through a public safety program, go to college here, stay here, come back here, and be employees of the city of Rockford in public safety, whether it be police or fire. The Rockford 5-0 Youth Basketball Program, run by one of our detectives, Detective Joe Danforth. He had high school kids, which would be 16 to 18-year-olds, in 2018 graduate, several of which went on to D1 colleges to play basketball. We fund part of those programs. The Rockford Police Explorer program. Every year we have 22 to 30 kids, approximately 14 to 20 years old. We have a basketball skills camp. In concert with the RHA, we put on week-long basketball skills camps at District 2 Gym. These kids range from 11 to 17 years old. We run the Community Violence Intervention Program. For the past 4 years, we've partnered with Youth Services Network to implement the Youth Violence Intervention Program. The Rolling Strong program, for the last several years, we've partnered with various agencies for the Rolling Strong Bike program. We work with Swedish American Hospital, United Way, Kegel's Bicycle Company, and the Youth Services Network to put a program together. High-risk kids are selected by Youth Services Network and juvenile probation. Kids come to the shop, learn how to repair bicycles with officers and bicycle mechanics from Kegel's while building relationships with the officers. At the end of the program, the kids get to keep the bike. This program is geared specifically to 13 to 17-year-olds. Neighborhood Strong Houses. For the past several years, we've partnered with United Way, Rosecrans, Youth Services Network to implement youth programming at the 8th Street Strong House. Kids interact with the officers during these events, and officers will often be involved in teaching lessons. Neighborhood block parties. The RPD partners with United Way and KFACT to implement multiple neighborhood block parties. These parties occur all over the community, and many agencies partner with us to provide resource information to the residents. Officers on site interact with the residents, and this is also toddlers all the way up through adults. The Fit Girls program. For the past 2 years, specifically Officer Watson has been working with young women of KFAC to teach them physical fitness in the form of CrossFit. We partner with CrossFit Supercell Rockford, who hosts the workout sessions. These are 14 to 18-year-old females. Gigi's Playhouse internships. We partner with Gigi's Playhouse to provide internships to young adults with intellectual disabilities. We provide this through the summer months. This is people 22 and up. Youth Police Academies. The Rockford Police Department Youth Police Academy is a week-long academy that targets a city at-risk youth ages 6 to 17. The department and collaborating partners from the community have planned to present 3 academies in 2020. Obviously, this has been detracted or derailed because of COVID. There's no cost to the kids. They just need to come and be part of it. Community Kids Zone. The school liaison officers conduct a 5-week activity afternoon camp at Auburn High School through the summer to include field trips. ages 8 to 17. The ice cream socials. This stems out of the resident officer, community keeper, or Rock House officers. They run the ice cream socials. The Rock program is another program we've instituted. Recreational night at the District 2 gym. We partner with the Rock House Kids, host a rec night every third Tuesday of the month, playing various activities with teenage children. The Adopt a Block program. We partner with the Fatherhood Encouragement Project, implement Adopt a Block in our high-risk neighborhoods. Volunteers and officers clean up neighborhoods and help residents fix blemished properties. Provide bouncy houses for the young kids, food and activities. Most of the kids that come out and help us are high school age kids as they're picking up trash through the neighborhood. The Girl Scouts. We partner with the Girl Scouts. We held dances and activities for them at the District 2 gym. Father-daughter dances. We hold father encouragement, or us with the Fatherhood Encouragement Project, hold summertime father-daughter dances down at D2. The multicultural potlucks. We partner with the Rockford Today Network and the Muslim Association of Greater Rockford, bring a diverse group to Community 2, eat various ethnic foods, and learn about the police department and each other. This is toddlers all the way up to 17 to older. Women's self-defense classes. High school age, middle age women come and get self-defense classes. Men's self-defense classes. We partnered with the Arabic community at the high school age to middle age men coming out for men's self-defense. Those are some of the programs that we have done, started, initiated, engaged in, with a strong emphasis on mostly children, teenagers, 16 and 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 22-year-olds included. I personally take time to read to the children in the Rockford elementary schools, as well as to speak to high school students in their classrooms. Outside of work, I've been a high school baseball coach. I've coached youth baseball, basketball, and football teams. I've taken time to drive an 18-year-old kid who I had coached for several years to the military recruiter office to get him out of a troubled and broken home. I've spoken at universities to try and attract law enforcement candidates. Additionally, although it's not in the complaint filed before you, it has been falsely stated on several or some media platforms that I did not want anyone convicted of a violent crime to come back to Rockford. Nothing could be falser. We've been operating a reentry program over the past 2 years for some of the more violent offenders returning on parole to Rockford. We do this in concert with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council of Winnebago County. As always, actions speak louder than words. And I wanted to give you a short summary of my actions to show this complaint filed against me to be false and without merit. I do not discriminate and have not discriminated against anyone based on their race, color, ethnicity, age, gender, national origin, religion, economic status, cultural group, sexual orientation, or any other identifiable group. I do not have or hold bias against 16 or 17-year-olds or anybody of any other age group. At this time, I would respectfully ask the commissioners to allow State's Attorney Height Ross to make a brief statement, as she was present and holding the press conference with me on the date in question. She has direct knowledge, and I request she be heard regarding the allegations in my complaint. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Is there any objection to hearing from State's Attorney Height Ross? Seeing none.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to address you today regarding Chief Dan O'Shea. I support totally. Everyone and every life has value. We who serve in public understand this, and more importantly, we who serve in government believe this. Respect, integrity, trust, and communication are 4 core values of the Winnebago County State's Attorney's Office. These are also 4 core values that I see exemplified by Chief O'Shea and his leadership with the Rockford Police Department. I have confidence in his integrity in which the Chief does his job because I have had the pleasure of working with him in Rockford since 2016. However, I have also known him from his previous position with the Elgin Police Department. I don't have to tell you about his record there because you thoroughly reviewed it prior to hiring him, and you determined that he was the appropriate choice to lead the Rockford Police Department. I, along with my law enforcement partners, appreciate his commitment and efforts in making our community safe. On May 18th, 2020, Chief O'Shea and I conducted a joint press conference to apprise the public of the increase in juvenile crime during the COVID-19 pandemic. We noticed a substantial increase in juvenile violent crimes during this period. As of the date of the press conference on May 18th, we had, within the prior 13 days, recovered 10 guns, and my office had charged various weapon offenses against several juveniles. It was important to share this information with the public because gun violence continues to be a significant threat to public safety in our community. Both myself and Chief O'Shea thought it prudent to address the community on this issue, to bring awareness to parents, family, friends, neighbors, and other community leaders so that they could be more vigilant in recognizing that all children need supervision. And sometimes the older children might need more guidance towards positive behaviors. I know the context in which the Chief's comments were made because I was there. The Chief was not expressing a bias in which he does his job, but his remarks referenced the vast number of juveniles who unfortunately find themselves charged with violent crimes that result in mandatory incarceration for a substantial period of time. In such cases, unfortunately, these children can no longer participate in the alternative programs that are offered within our community. More importantly, I know the Chief, and I know he is committed to steering children out of the criminal justice system and on a path of being law-abiding citizens. The Chief and I belong to a national organization called Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. The goal of this organization is to provide positive activities for children during the time period where most juvenile crimes occur, which is after school. During his tenure as Chief, we have participated in afternoon school programs where we read to children and engage them in other positive activities. We do this because we want children to have a positive interaction with law enforcement agencies, and perhaps they would want a career in law enforcement. I have personally seen the smiles of these children and their faces light up when they are able to interact with the Chief, give him a fist pump, and take pictures with him. This truly exemplifies his heart and his love for children. My goal as state's attorney has always been to implement preventative measures by engaging and interacting with children so that they remain in the classroom and not the courtroom. And I know that Chief O'Shea shares this goal as well. I believe that Chief O'Shea has always performed his duties and responsibilities in an honorable manner, and under his leadership, the Rockford Police Department has embodied the full breadth of community policing, not just in words, but in deeds. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam State's Attorney. So we are now at the point where there can be some deliberation on the issue of probable cause. But as you know, Robert's Rules requires a pending motion on the floor to foster that debate. So at this time, I would entertain a motion with respect to probable cause on the complaint. there a second? There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to turn on your microphones. That'd be.
Thank you. I've had the opportunity during my time here in Rockford, which dates back to 1979. I've had the opportunity to know every chief since that time, including Chief Peterson, Chief Fitzpatrick, Chief Nielsen, Chief Pugh, Chief Epperson, and now Chief O'Shea. I had the opportunity to sit down with Chief O'Shea when I was appointed to the commission in November of 2018. And having been a former president of the Goodwill Industries of Northern Illinois, we shared our management philosophies, and I walked away extremely impressed not only with the chief and how he manages. One of the speakers earlier this morning said you could plug Chief O'Shea into any department in the country and he would have success. And I would suggest that you could plug Chief O'Shea into any corporation in the country and he would have great success just because of the skill set that he possesses. I'm just, with regards to the complaint, I am just having a hard time connecting the dots on the statements that were made versus this litany of programs that the chief mentioned and many of the speakers talked about that are directly targeted towards our youth and trying to improve their lives. So it's just very hard for me to think that there's any actions that the chief has done that leads to bias. And so I'd like to hear from our other commissioners, and I may have other comments as we go forward.
Go ahead.
This went on.
It should be, yeah.
Okay. I've read the complaint many times. I have listened to the excerpts from the news conference, and I focused on just the complaint and just the policy. I felt like that's where we have to be because
Commissioner West, I'm reminded it's difficult to hear over on the other side of the room. I'd ask all of you if you could just lean a little bit into your microphones.
All right. Just to say again, I've read the complaint numerous times. I've read the policy numerous times, not only the policy included with the complaint, but separately a copy that I do have of the policy. I have listened to the news conference 2 or 3 times, not only the part that's been taken out and put into the complaint, but also the entire portion of it to see the context of what was said. And I've come to, without even going any further as far as what Chief O'Shea has done with the positive aspects of the community, just viewing the complaint versus the policy, I've looked at this and I've said, well, there is a select amount of individuals that he has said that he just can't do anything with, and those were 16 and 17-year-olds that were shooting each other and murdering in the city. That's not considered a protective class. As one speaker said, we hope that's not a lot of our 16 and 17-year-olds. We know at that age, and if we will all remember at that age, we did some things that we hope that nobody ever writes in a book, hope that you know, but it never got to that level of egregiousness. But we've hired him as the chief law enforcement officer of the city. And as the chief law enforcement officer, his job is to then say, if you are shooting each other or murdering in the city, we have to then commit you over to the Department of Corrections. And as he did say, we have reentry programs after their time is served. That does not, to me, appear as discriminatory prejudice against that age group. It's against certain ones that we are, I think, afraid to call criminals, because they are doing criminal activity, and they are making life miserable for those that are trying to live their life in Rockford. So those are just my thoughts on that.
Commissioner Jones, do you have any comments?
Well, I wasn't going to say, I really don't have many comments, other than I did want to thank everyone who reached out to us.
Commissioner Jones, could you lean into your microphone a little bit? I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just wanted to thank everyone for reaching out to us, but I tried to thank the people, that did reach out, but I'm sure I didn't get everybody. The letters and the thousands of people who signed the petitions for and against, thank you for being here, to those who spoke today, just for being involved in our community. As Commissioner West said, I looked at the same thing, the complaint versus the policy. And although I may have thought that things could have been worded differently, I did not feel that that anything arose to the inherent bias as according to the policy. And that's all that I was looking at, the policy. And I just went with the facts. And the other things, we took all this information in that everybody gave, but the thing for me is always to look at the facts and then try to make my determination. And that's it.
Could you once again repeat the motion too?
Sure. And I'll, when we get through discussion, I'll lay all that out before we vote for you. Yeah.
Sam, did you have some more you wanted to add?
Any other comments?
No, I mentioned the previous chiefs that I've known here in Rockford, and I would put Chief O'Shea right up there at the top with what he's brought to this community and what he inherited. Night and day difference. And again, I go back to his actions versus the words he used at that press conference, and I just cannot connect the dots on that he's done some fantastic things. The litany of programs that he mentioned and other speakers, it's just I got to agree with both Commissioner West and Jones that the facts kind of just speak for themselves as it relates to the policy, and so that would be my comments.
Commissioner West, anything further? Commissioner Jones, anything further? Without any further discussion, the pending motion was stated in the affirmative, that is to say that the Commission enter a finding of probable cause and proceed to a full evidentiary hearing on the complaint. As such, a yes vote would result in us taking that next step and proceeding to an evidentiary hearing. A no vote would result in a finding of no probable cause to proceed, and the complaint would go no further. So a yes vote means we proceed, no vote means we do not. So I will call the question now. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask one more time. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner West?
No.
Commissioner Schmitz?
No.
Commissioner Jones?
No.
With that, there are 3 no votes. The complaint goes no further, and the Commission will enter a finding of no probable cause. The only other item on our agenda is reserved for communications to the board from the police and fire departments. Anyone care to make any communication from either of those departments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
You did a great job, too.
But it's longer than it should.